Symphony for many, many years. I listened to this alma mater twice a week for 4 years, and I would play while a lot of my classmates were listening to Led Zeppelin, and I have to confess, I listened to a little bit of that too. But I was also listening to Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, and it gave me motivation going out on the football field and the wrestling mats. But I will invite up shortly a lady who's a native of the same region where the great poet of freedom, Friederich Schiller, was born, in Swabia, in Marbach. But I want to fast forward till 1985, and because I still hadn't put 2 and 2 together. I mean, I sang that, I heard those words sung, those immortal words, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. It wasn't until 1985, teaching at a private Quaker school in Philadelphia, and was at a library at Penn, doing some research, and there was a table out near the street corner, right on the edge of the campus, and these guys were talking about developing nuclear power for the development of the third world, and quoting John Paul VI, his encyclical Populorum Progressio, that the new name for peace is development, that you can't have peace without justice, that you can't have justice without economic justice. And I said, wow. And I lifted up this pamphlet, looked at it, and I said, well, Friederich Schiller, poet of freedom? What's this have to do with anything? So they said, well, you know this poet. I said, really? I said, yes. If you've heard the Ninth Symphony, then you know this poet. So I looked through this pamphlet, and I was looking around, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. I started looking at this poem, and sure enough, I recognized it as the Ode to Joy. And I looked in other places, and I discovered that Schiller had written many extraordinary plays. One of them was William Tell. And I remember that from my childhood. My favorite program was The Lone Ranger. And that was set to the tune of the William Tell Overture, which was an opera by Rossini, but it was based entirely on Schiller's play, William Tell. And then I discovered that at a certain point, Schiller had become, his works had been censored because he incited the Republican passions of the youth, especially around this concept of freedom, which wasn't exactly known in the same way it was over here. And Schiller was born in 1759. He died in 1805. So as a youth, he was, as all of the great Republicans of Europe, the freedom lovers, the ones who wanted to develop systems of self-government. And Europe never had any of that. It was either some form of colonialism, feudalism, dukedoms, and this and that, where you had, you know, an elite class around the king or the duke or the emperor. You had the hangers-on, the administrative class, and then you had basically the peasants on the land, and a lot of tax farming, taking away everything that they tilled, and left some crumbs for everyone else. But so Schiller was inspired by the American Revolution, and I can assure you that there was no poet in history who combined the idea of political freedom with classical poetic beauty, with the power and passion of Friedrich Schiller. But he was banned by the Carlsbad decrees in the restoration of the Holy Alliance after the Napoleonic Wars, which shocked Schiller. The great hope of Europe was the French Revolution. It was felt that finally, you know, the American Revolution could come back to Europe. But when it erupted into the bloody Jacobin tyranny, Schiller commented, "A great moment had found an unresponsive people." And so there is two types of revolutions, and we're still waiting to see what happens in Greece, but there is the American Revolution that was inspired by great poetry, the Declaration of Independence, the works of Plato. It's throughout the Founding Fathers' writings, the Republic. The idea of justice based on virtue, not on power. That right, it's not that might makes right, it's that right makes might. So in any event, Schiller set forth to write his works of philosophy on aesthetics, on beauty. I'll get to that a little bit later. But William Tell had to be written to an earlier historical epoch because under the censorship, Schiller was not able to write about contemporary events after his play Cabal und Liebe, Intrigue and Love, which exposed the Hessian mercenaries under the pay of the British. And that was it. So he was censored. But everyone knew that William Tell was actually an allegory about the American Revolution. And Schiller lifts sections of the American Declaration of Independence in his play. There's one scene where the Swiss, you've all heard of the scene about the Swiss farmer pulls his arrow. He's forced by the Austrian tyrant to shoot an arrow, throw an apple on top of his son's head. And at a certain point, this resembles kind of the caprice of the god Zeus, who punished Prometheus because he dared to give reason to man and was tethered to the side of a cliff for all of eternity. But Prometheus had the last laugh because he told Zeus that he was the one who was actually doomed for playing tricks on man and not giving man his freedom, and that by violating a higher law, Zeus would be dooming himself. And similarly, in this case, they had these farmers, these Swiss peasants, who had been tilling the land for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was their livelihood. It was their livelihood. And some petty dictator, some clerk, some lawyer came by and found some pretext to take away their land, which was their livelihood. And they debated. And it's in this play, long debates about, is it ever right to raise the sword in defense of your freedom? And it engendered a passionate discussion on both sides. They all agreed that even in the best case, it was a bad choice, but they came to the agreement that there might be some circumstances where it's right. And so you have the famous Rütli Oath. And the Rütli Oath is in the little canton of Rütli in Switzerland. And it says, some guy stands up, they're outside, they're wondering what to do. They've got to defend themselves against this tyrant. Finally someone says, no, there's a limit to the tyrant's power. When the oppressed can find no justice, when the burden grows too great, he reaches with hopeful courage for his eternal rights, which lie inalienable and indestructible as the stars themselves. So the whole concept that the inalienable rights of man are God-given from above. So this was amazing. I mean, I didn't know Schiller. I asked around various people, teachers, at the school I was teaching, others, department heads, librarians, and no one seemed to have known who Schiller was. And I was amazed. And I was told that there's a statue of Schiller here in Philadelphia, in Fairmount Park. So I did a little research, and I discovered that in 1859, at Schiller's centennial, there were 2,000 people over a whole weekend in Fairmount Park celebrating Schiller's life. And they erected this statue in Fairmount Park that stands opposite of the great German poet Goethe, between a little pool. And so that was rather extraordinary and very inspirational for me to recognize. But it was very disheartening that such a poet like Schiller could be virtually forgotten in America.